Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kamran and I'm a senior project manager. I have been working during 12 years in several IT projects as a project manager, and I have managed projects in waterfall as well as agile environments. In my experience, actually, there is no project which you can manage fully in waterfall, neither is there any project which we can manage fully in agile. So I'm one of the biggest supporters of managing projects in hybrid environments. It means some parts of the projects can be managed waterfall, some parts of the projects can be managed agile. In theory, whenever your business case, the content of your project is complex, you tend to manage that more and more in agile. While or whereas when the content is more complicated, you manage your project more in waterfall. Other words which we use for waterfall and agile are predictive and adaptive. Predictive, it relates more to waterfall approach in which you predict actually the outcome of your project, whereas adaptive is more agile and it is more responding to change. My experience is whenever a project manager or a release train engineer or let's say a product manager even or a program manager when he or she is appointed to manage a project or a program, a high level planning or a long term planning or a roadmap needs to be made. But whether you manage your project in waterfall or agile, it means predictive or adaptive, your roadmap is going to be always predictive. Uh, I don't know such a thing as a adaptive roadmap. Of course, along the way, you can adapt your roadmap, but at the beginning of a project, you make a predictive plan. Even if you use a lot of agile principles such as Kanban, sprints, or your framework is more something like safe, scalable, agile framework. In order to make a good roadmap or a good high level planning at the beginning of the project, I use my old friends Microsoft Projects. It's a tool that I've been using for about 12 years, and it always helped me to visualize the schedule, visualize the roadmap, highlight the resources, and also highlight the costs in man days or in currency. I live in Europe, so we use euro. So let me welcome you to provide you a simple demonstration of how to use the hybrid methodology in Microsoft projects. I see you in 2 minutes. Hello again. This is the interface of Microsoft projects. The first thing that we do is saving our project and giving it a meaningful name. So I'm going to use a directory or a folder on my OneDrive. I'm one of the most supporters of Microsoft projects. And I'm going to uh, save it in a new folder, which I'm going to call hybrid projects. Let's say the scope of our project or the objective of our project is building a data mart in the data warehousing system of our uh, IT infrastructure. So we call that sales data mart. Before we start, we have to make some serious setups. I go here to File and I go to Options. In options, I go to schedule, and I'm going to make or to use some parameters which I always use at the beginning of my projects. So the tasks are auto-scheduled. I'm going to demonstrate why. The duration is in days. The work is also in days. And as we are going to estimate the work to uh, build some enablers and features, I'm going to use fixed work as a parameter. I'm going to insert another column which is called work. And we calculate and determine the duration based on the formula, which is work is equals to duration multiplied by number of resources. As I'm going to need a meaningful Gantt chart, I'm going to use two tiers on my Gantt chart. And the first tier is years, and the second tier is, let's say, months. All right. We are going to back to the future, and we are going to determine the date of our project. Let's say somewhere beginning of June, as I'm going to demonstrate later on in the project that actuals can be calculated. Okay. I'm going to name our projects Data Mart Sales. And as you know, in many agile frameworks such as SAFe, we use program increments in which we deliver some objectives on the program level. So I'm going to build my first program increment. And I just give a number, program increment 1, and I'm going to make an intent. We are going to assume that we are going to build our solution based on two agile teams. The first agile team is going to make the data warehousing components and the reports. So we are going to call them team data warehousing slash reporting. Right. And the second team is more responsible for enablers, for non-functional requirements such as security, API connection, authentication, authorization, and so on. And it needs to be, and we will need also some Java development. So we are going to make another team, which is called team uh, Java, for instance. Now, each team or each squad or agile team in agile consists of several uh, team members. Normally, we have three team members, nine person per team. What am I saying? So I'm going to make my resources here. So let's go to assign resources or resource pool. Maybe that's better. You can also go to resource sheet. Here, I'm going to make my first group. The first team is called the data warehousing team. Right. And resource name. We are going to assume that we have, of course, a product owner which determines the requirements. And then we have a functional analyst which analyzes the requirements of the product owner and and uh, uh, gives the specs to the developers. In data warehousing, we use an ETL tool. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So we are going to have two developers, ETL developer number one and ETL developer number two. They still make parts of the data warehousing team. We also have some people who are responsible to draft reports. So we call that report engineer. Still data warehousing team. And of course, we have our business, which is responsible to uh, test the reports when they are delivered. We let's just call them actually the business. And they also make part of the data warehousing team. Now, the interesting thing is if you already provide the rate of your resources here, automatically the tool is going to calculate the costs for you. Let's say a product owner is an expensive resource, so the product owner costs, let's just say 800 euro per day. The functional analyst is also an expensive resource, and let's say that he or she costs 700 euro, 750 euro per day. The first ETL developer, we assume that he or she is a senior one, and he or she is a tech lead, so he has a higher rate. Market-wise, it's also 850 euro per day. And the second one is a junior developer, and he or she is coached by the first developer or by the tech lead. So he or she costs much less, and let's say his or her rate is 600 euro per day. A report engineer, assuming that he or she is a senior, costs, let's say, 750 euro per day. And the average cost of involving the business in the project is internally calculated, and let's say it's also 750 euro per day. Now, we also determine the resources of the second team. The second team, we call that the Java team. Right. It exists of an architect, of a functional analyst who is responsible more for non-functional requirements. We don't have really business requirements here. A security engineer who is actually, let's say, a kind of a developer who develops in Java. And we have also product owner uh, security, assuming that the two product owners are apart. So I'm going to call this one product owner data warehousing and the other one product owner security. They all make parts of the Java team. I better emphasize also the names so it won't give us any confusion. Mhm. Architect and this functional analyst is more the Java functional analyst. Right, and of course, we also determine the rates for these resources. Let's say security architects cost something like 850 euro a day. A functional analyst Java, let's say he or she costs 700 euro a day. A security engineer costs 650 euro a day. And product owner security, let's say that he or she has the same rate as his colleague at the data warehousing team, and he or she costs 850 euro a day. Okay, we have our resource pool. Of course, we can extend it more with project manager, release train engineers, enterprise architect, solution architect, but I would like actually to keep this demonstration simple and not make it too complicated. I go back to my Gantt chart, and in the team reporting, uh, we have decided that we are going to deliver two major features. Feature number one is the back end. Oh, sorry, a typo here. And the back end consists of the data warehousing elements, which we call facts and dimension tables. And there is another feature. I'm just going to make a copy and paste it a bit down. The second feature is the reporting feature. Feature number two, uh, reporting. Right. And for the Java team, we have one enabler. Enabler are actually the architectural components which uh, connects and facilitate the features. And features are, let's say, more the business requirements in agile terms. Some people might disagree with my definitions, but these are my own interpretations and my own experience based on my experiences. So here we have, let's say, one enabler, and the first enabler is, for instance, API, API gateway, and we make an intent here. And the second enabler is the security. So let's say, oh, sorry, these need to be intended. Let's say team data warehousing is heavily dependent on the team Java, because if they wouldn't deliver, our reporting and data warehousing won't function. This team is working very thoroughly with the business, and this team is more IT, although they are all also IT uh, resources. Now, of course, in the agile environments, every feature or every enabler consists of one or several user stories, which are actually determined by the product owner or sometimes by the team or by both of them, or in organizations where agile is not mature enough, the team delivers the user stories, but normally it's the responsibility of the product owner. But as we are working here hybrid, I'm not going to write down all the user stories which are, for instance, connected to feature one, or all the user stories which are connected to feature two. Remember, we are at the beginning of our project, and we are making a business case and a project plan, and we have to demonstrate our roadmap to the steering committee. So first, we just want to know what are we going to deliver by when. Uh, Under feature one, which is actually delivering of facts and dimension tables, we are going to write down a a WBS, a work breakdown structure. Whereas you can say feature one and feature two and enabler one and enabler two, there are more components of a product breakdown structure. So we have our high level product breakdown structure, but beneath them we make a work breakdown structure because we have to estimate the efforts per resource for every work. So we are going to make an inventory of the tasks which needs to be done in order to realize feature one. And we start, of course, with requirement gathering. And of course, I'm going to make them intent. They are all going to become children of feature one. Then we have functional analysis. Then we have ETL. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. And then we have ETL development. And then we have integration tests. One might ask me, oh, you're working here agile, so why don't you implement the business here as well so they would perform UAT? My answer is very simple. These are all database components, and it is actually not always possible to engage somebody from the business to tests, tables, joins, indexes on database level. It is integration tests or system tests or functional tests are things which are mostly done by the functional analyst. So the business is not involved here in this phase. Just had a little cup of coffee. That was nice. Now, we have to assign resources to each task. You can go here to details, and in details you can assign resources. So requirement gathering, it's something which is done always by the product owner, and let's assume that the product owner is 100% available. Before this exercise, we had team meeting and we had 1, 2, 3 workshops, and we determined the estimation of efforts of each resource. On the next video, I'm going to organize a demonstration or a presentation about the best practices for estimation of efforts. But let's assume that now we have all our estimations. So the requirement gathering for the backend, which is actually more based on the front end, is going to cost, let's say, something like 20 man days. All right. And it would start on the first day of the project, which is 1st of June. Then the functional analyst has to start its analysis, its data models. So we are going to assign this task to the functional analyst of the data warehousing, assuming that he or she is 100% available, and he or she would make an estimation of effort, and he or she would say it's going to cost me 30 days. Right. Now, functional analysis is dependent on requirement gathering. So line number 6 is going to be uh, dependent on line number 5. Okay. As you can see, you see a perfect waterfall task here. Whereas we are more working iteratively and also more adaptive. So this task doesn't need to start when all the requirements are gathered. Actually, we can make an assumption that this task is going to start minus 10 days when already a part of the requirements are gathered. ETL design, it is actually the physical data model which needs to be drafted by the senior developer, for which we are going to use ETL developer number 1, uh, who is more senior. But mostly senior people are not always 100% available. They work on 1, 2, 3 projects. So let's assume that this person is only 50% of his time available. And in order to make an ETL design, it consists of mapping documents. There are always disputes between analyst and ETL designer who is going to make the mapping documents between source and targets. But let's say that this person is going to make the mapping document and also the physical data model. So let's say he has a lot of work for that, and he's going to estimate that it's going to cost me 50 man days. Now, first of all, this task is dependent on number 6. Then we have again a perfect waterfall. And when the work is 50 man days and the person is 50% available, the duration of the task is going to be 100 days. So, as we said, we are not going to work on a perfect waterfall and sequential way. The assumption is that this task is going to, let's say, start minus 20 days. So the lag is minus 20. As soon as we have already some logical data models from the functional analyst, we can analyze the ETL design. And then we go to the developments, and the developments are going to be done by the second developer. The second developer is a more junior developer, and we are going to dedicate him or her 100% for these projects. And he or she is going to need less time than the ETL designer because he or she is going to get a great design document. with physical data model and so on. So let's say for him, but he or she remains a junior. So at the beginning, we made an estimation of effort of 40 man days. And this task is also dependent on number 7. Again, the whole document doesn't need to be ready. Actually, we can also we can do something else. We can say that the ETL development needs to be finished by the moment that the ETL design is finished. So we also work more iteratively. This is also called in the project management terms fast tracking, which you perform some tasks in parallel in order to save time. So our developments are done. For instance, here we can make a milestone and write down ETL developments done. And we are going to make that dependent on number 8. Right. But a milestone is always has a duration of 0. So as you can see, by 15th of November, our development and build is going to be finished. Same thing, for instance, here we can write down that requirement gathering and functional analysis, or we just call it analysis, is done. So we are going to make that dependent on number 5 and 6. And the duration is 0. Right. I'm going to explain you later on in this video why it's important to highlight milestones, because it can be very useful for your reporting. The integration tests are going to be done by the functional analyst, because normally a product owner is somebody from the business. So as I said, he or she cannot uh, start testing the columns, the joins, the indexing, the stored procedures. It's something which is done mostly by an functional analyst. So integration test is going to be done by the functional analyst. And let's say he or she is also 100% available. And for the tests, assuming that everything has been done correctly, he or she needs 10 days. Of course, our analysts can only perform the test uh, when the developments are done. So we are going to make this task dependent on task number 10, which is the milestone. But this task, but also our functional analyst needs to be available in order to perform the tests. Normally, the analysis has been finished in somewhere in July, and from this period and on this period, he can provide support to the team. We didn't mention that here, but we can see that he or she is available. In order to be sure, of course, we can also make this task dependent on task number 6. Of course, the more dependencies that you place, the more spaghetti that you visualize. So I'm just going to get rid of this dependency. Okay, let's do it again. Yep, that's better. Now, we can make another milestone and we can say feature 1 is feature 1 delivered. And again, we make that dependent on number 11. Duration is 0. And oops, we can say to our management on 29th, feature 1 is delivered. Feature 2 is totally dependent on feature 1. Why? We need a backend on our data warehousing in order to make uh, reports. And in this phase, the business is going to be more and more involved because the final products, the reports, are the products which are used and which are going to be used by our business. I just had uh, cup, another cup of coffee, which gives me more energy. Now, for the reporting, we are going to assume that a lot of requirements have been already done here because actually the product owner has gathers requirements about the final product. Still, some detail requirements needs to be finished. Things such as, for instance, the report uh, does it need to have a table? Does it need to have uh, charts, stacks, circle diagrams, line diagrams? Do we need KPIs? Here, let's say we are going to finalize the requirements. Again, an intent of feature number 2, which is reporting. And for this one, we are going again to allocate our product owner data warehousing. Now, the product owner of the data warehousing can work on the rest of the requirements when task number 5 is finished. So we are going to make it dependent on number 5. And he or she says, yeah, it's a lot of work. I need to define KPIs. I need to define the formulas. I need to see, I need to visualize our dashboard, our reports. How many reports do we have? 5, 6, 7, 5, 6 complex reports, 1, 2 ad hoc reports. I don't know. So it's going to take some time. And in order to do that, I need a period of 70 days, which seems to be normal actually for such a complex projects. And then our functional analysts is going to uh, analyze the specs for the reports. And we are going to make this task dependent on task number 6 in order to make sure that this person is not going to be over allocated to functional analyst data warehousing. Again, 100%. And we are going to say that he or she needs 50 days. And this task is going to be dependent on task number 6. Oops. As you can see, it's good because by coincidence, these tasks can be finished almost at the same time. So the functional analyst doesn't need to wait until all the requirements from the product owner are gathered. And here again, we can make a milestone. Let's also give some meaningful name. Analysis feature one is done. And here we say analysis feature two is done. Well, uh, this milestone is dependent on tasks number 14 and number 15. Duration 0. Voila. You can see that uh, that analysis is going to be done somewhere in October. And I don't see visually any over allocation of the functional analyst because he has to make some efforts on the analysis on the integration tests. So but I don't think my gut feeling is telling me that there is no over allocation. But if you want to be sure, I'm just going to save. You can go to resource usage. Hmm. Best way to do that is, of course, hide the details and you go to resource usage. And I see that there is no resource which is at this moment over allocated, otherwise they have been read. In resource sheets, you can also see that. So we go back to our Gantt chart. Then we go to report design. Some functional analysts design the reports, but in this case, we are going to allocate this task to the report engineer, which is a kind of a developer in order to uh, develop reports. It depends actually in which technology the reports are going to be made. Is it in SAP Business Objects? Then a presentation layer, which is called Universe, needs to be done, and then the reports needs to be based on that. I think in IBM Cognos, you also have a presentation layer tool, which is called front-end manager. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a long time. It's been years that I've developed in Cognos. And as far as I remember, I used to be in 2005 a developer in SQL Server. And in SQL Server, as far as I know, you don't have a presentation layer, but you can make a data model design before making your drafting your reports in SSRS. So we are going to say that our report designer is also 100% available, and designing reports is, well, a lot very time consuming, so it's going to cost let's say something like 70 man days. And of course reporting design is uh, uh, dependent on number 16, which is the milestone. Again, uh, it doesn't need to be a perfect waterfall, so we are going to assume that a lag of minus 20 days must be sufficient in order to provide enough material and enough analysis to the report engineer to make his or her reports. And here we are going to allocate the functional analyst for integration tests. Functional analysts. and he or she is going to need another 10 days. And this task is dependent on number 17. Mhm. Now, again, visually, I would like to see the resource allocation. I see that the functional analyst makes performs on the tests here in November and also somewhere in December. I think he or she is still not understaffed, but again, in order to be sure, I go to my resource usage. And no, I don't see any red lines. So luckily, nobody is over allocated. And of course, here we are going to set up another milestone and we are going to say uh, report development is done, dependent on number 18. And duration is 0. And here we are going to use, of course, the business in order to test the reports. So we are going to make a phase which is UAT, and we are going to allocate the business, and we are going to make an agreement with the business that during the testing phase, the business resources are going to be for 50% available to perform the tests. We make a calculation of effort. We have, for instance, 10 reports. Testing of one report, of one complex report by the business is going to cost, let's say, 2 hours. 2 hours multiplied by 10 reports is 20 hours. Let's take also a little bit of contingency. Let's say 24 hours. 24 hours divided by 8 hours, then we are talking about 3 days of testing. And the business is going to work, is dependent, of course, on the reports. We put another task which is called corrections, and let's say we are going to allocate our junior developer to correct uh, the tasks, and we are going to make that actually together with with the UAT, and it's also going to cost 3 days. Now you see that the duration of the UAT tests is double than the duration of the corrections, and that's very easy. The UAT staff are 50% designated to the task. And here we can say, well, feature two is delivered. We make it dependent of number 21. And here you go. We have our Gantt chart for feature 1 and feature 2. Now, we still haven't done anything and we haven't still planned our non-functional requirements, our enablers. For the API gateway, we need our architectural study intent, and we are going to allocates are architects, security architects. Architects are actually over allocated resources, so we are going to say that he or she is only 20% of his time or her time available, but there is some work to be done. Architect estimates and he or she says, I need 10 days. As you can see, uh, the work starts at the beginning of the project. And you see that the work is 10 days, but the duration is 50 days because the architect, poor guy, doesn't have a lot of time. He or she works on several projects. And then some Java development needs to be done. We call it API Java development. And this is allocated to our Java developer. Where can I find him or her? Security engineer. Yeah, that's the security engineer. And he or she is 100% dedicated. The phone is ringing. I better not take it. Now, this is something which is very waterfall because this architectural study needs to be perfectly in order to see what kind of API gateway are we talking about, what needs to be done for that, and it's a precision work. And sometimes it it cannot be done totally uh, iteratively. So we are going to leave it as it is. It's a perfect waterfall. And then some testing needs to be done. Test API. And it's also going to be done by the security architect. By the way, the architect doesn't need to be necessarily the security architect, but okay. Uh, Again, he or she is 20% of his time available, and he needs 2 days of work, and this task is dependent on number 26. Right. And here we can set up a milestone and say API ready. And we are going to make it dependent on number 27, duration 0. Yeah, or maybe we can, as it is actually an enabler, we can say API enabler is ready. Right, and then we go to the enabler security, for which we have another product owner. Let's say we have a product owner in the organization who is in charge for security, and he or she might be also a business resource, but he or she might be also an IT resource. Mostly these people they come from the IT. Let's be lucky and say that he or she is 50% of his time available. So wait, I think I'm making a mistake here. I didn't write down the name here. We are going to call that security requirements gathering, right? And the work, well, it's not normally it's not a lot, but it's mostly complicated. And it starts at the beginning of the project. And then we make the functional analysis of security, and it's going to be done by the functional analysts of the Java. And it's going to cost, let's say, this person is also 50% of its time of his time available, and he needs 10 days of analysis. And this is also uh, uh, dependent on the requirements of security. And then we have our Java security Java development. And the security Java development is going to be done by the security engineer. Uh, let's say 100% available. And let's say that this person needs at least 30 days of work, but it is actually dependent on number 31, and he or she works also here, security engineer, in this period. So in August and September, and in June and in September, he works on two tasks, and he might be over allocated. I can see that here, but in order to be sure, I go to resource usage. Uh, this is a mistake that I always make. It depends what kind of interface you are using. But I go here to the resource usage, and indeed, I see that the security engineer is over allocated. And I go a bit further. And as you can see here in this week, he works 5 days. And if he go to he works 5 days here, 5 days there. On two tasks. Well, we can say that this person is going to only finish this task when his task is finished here. So security engineer Java development is going to be dependent on number 26. Right. Now, also the security solution needs to be tested this time by the functional analyst. So testing security. Functional analyst Java. It's going to cost maybe 4 days. We are going to make it dependent on number 32. And if everything is well, security is going to be delivered by 29th of 10. So, security delivered, number 33. Oops. Okay. Now, we are going to visualize. As I said before, feature 1 and 2 are dependent on enablers 1 and 2, enablers API, enablers security. Uh, we are going to deliver the enabler on 27th of September, and the security is going to be delivered on 29th of October. But our final deliverable is planned actually on 4th of January. So we have some time. The question is, when does team 1 needs the full solution here? On the Scrum of a Scrum, the Scrum Master of this team is going to talk with the Scrum Master of the other team, and the project manager or release engineer or the program manager is going to align. But let's assume that the timing is good, and we need this solution in order to finalize our uh, uh, you know, reporting. So latest by end of this date, which is 13th of January, security solution needs to be ready. I see here a task which is empty. Let me just check. Analysis, integration tests, and I think that it's going to be here report, development, and integration tests. Okay. So in order to make this task dependent on this task, we are going to say that this task is dependent on number 34. So we make here number 34. And you see, but this is not correct because actually not the beginning of this task, but the end of this task needs to be dependent. So reporting there, it needs to be actually finish to finish. Good. And our final delivery date is going to remain on 4th of January. You can go also a lot in details and say that some the testing about the connectivity of the security and so on is necessary, but let's not do that. Same thing, the report design is also dependent on the API. So we are going to make this task dependent on 28. And again, it is finish to finish. Right. Now, as you can see, I'm just going to come again a little bit in the theories of adaptive and predictive waterfall vs agile. Here, as you can see, the tasks are more iteratively and more in parallel, whereas here it's more waterfall. The more straight away and complicated the solution, the more waterfall. The more complex the solution, it's more agile. Complex, it means, for instance, here in the reporting, we don't know by this date what kind of reports we want. So this task lies on the critical path, and we start a little bit the functional analysis and report engineering or report design earlier in order to respond more and more to changing requirements. But technical things like enablers or security, they are more straightforward. The solution is not complex but complicated, but we know what's step number one, what's step number two, what's step number three. Now, we work agile, and we have actually we have our features and we have our enablers, but we have to know in what sprint what is going to be delivered in which sprint. In order to do that, I'm just going to make a task here, sprints, and I'm going to make that a recurrent task. In order to make a recurrent task, we have to go to, let me check again to the tasks, and we go here to the task, recurring task. And again, I name the task sprint. It occurs every 2 weeks. We work with sprints of 2 weeks, and it occurs actually every day. No, sorry, every Monday. And it's gonna end, yeah, by end of the project. Right. Now we have a problem here because we see that the duration of each sprint is 1 day. So that's not the case. Uh, we have to say that duration is 14 days. Voila, that's more better. That's more like it. I see here at the end. Uh, okay, that was the task that I added at the beginning. Sprints. And here we have sprint 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, I can see which deliverable is going to be delivered in which sprint. We are going to make a little bit of cleansing here. First of all, I would like the milestones to be all in red. I go here to the milestones. I determine the color red everywhere. Let's see what we get. And yes, all the milestones are highlighted in red. Then again, I go to bar styles, and the tasks are good. They are in blue, but the group buys, I would like to have on the right side the name. Funny, I don't get it. Maybe it's here on the summary. Name. Right. So on the groups, I have my the names of my sub-projects. But also, I don't want the name of the resources here on the tasks. I want the name of the tasks. Again, I go to the bar cycle, text. Instead of resource name, I just use name. That's better. It's better. To my understanding, it's more presentable. Right. And now we are going to make a baseline of our projects. In order to make a baseline, we go to View. Uh, Let me think. Sorry, I'm getting a bit tired. I have to look it up. Okay, set baseline. And I set my baseline. In Microsoft Project, you can use 10 baselines. So let's use baseline number 1. And this is going to be my baseline. I see that my project is gonna, or let's say product increments. We can also add more product increments in Agile, but my product increment is gonna cost 447 man days, and the duration is 168 days. So we start beginning of June, and we are gonna end somewhere in January. And for the moment, I haven't put the holiday plans of the resources because I still don't know that. We are at the beginning of the project. Now, I'm going to also enter the column cost in order to know the cost of my projects in Europe. But also, I can know exactly the cost of every feature and every enabler. The project was uh, started at beginning of June. Now we are 8th of July. So I'm gonna put a percentage of completion on the tasks which have been done in the past. For instance, this one, requirement gathering, let's say it's totally done. Functional analysis, let's say we have only 25% is done, we have some delay. ETL, uh, let's say 0% is done. Oh, let's be a bit more optimistic. You can also go here in details and you can say 5%, for instance, is done. Then what have we got in the past? Finalizing requirements. Uh, let's say this is also done for 10%. And then architectural study. Oh, our architect has fallen sick and it has been only done for 5%. Security requirements, let's be very optimistic and say it has been done for 100%. Functional analysis, let's say also it has been done for 10%. Right. And then we are going to see what are our actuals. Actual cost, we see that from our total cost, 40,000 euro has already been consumed. Actual work, we can see that 48 days has already been consumed. And then we can visualize also the baseline. Highlights critical in order to visualize the critical tasks. So we see that these tasks are actually on the critical path of the projects. And we can go here to the view, and we can also highlight critical tasks. It's been a while. I have to search for that. Where was it again? I guess it's in view, highlight critical, yeah. Format. Yeah, critical tasks. Wherever you see a kind of red tasks, it is critical. Suppose here I say, oh damn, we need more days. Initially, we have estimated 30 days, of which 7.5 days are consumed. But we need 10 more days. So instead of 30 days, we need 40 days. Then this task is going to come on the critical path. Any delay on this task is going to delay the rest. Same thing here, for instance, with the ETL design. We said we need 50 days, but of which 2.5 days are consumed. But then we say, oh no, we need 60 days. Now, for some reason, it's not yet on the critical path. But for instance, the development, we need some more budget. Well, let's be a little bit. You see, so they come on the critical path. And then we can highlight the baseline vs the actuals actually. That's the Gantt chart style, but let's highlight the slippage. So you see, for instance, here at the ETL, that was the initial, and that's now the slippage, the time that we have lost. Now, we can say here that our project is going to be finished on end of January. And we have here our actual costs, our costs in euro and in man days and in duration. What I want to say is that this tool gives you the opportunity to make a schedule, to highlight the costs, gives you the opportunity, if you know it quite well, to make a hybrid project approach like here. And it can also make the lives of a lot of project manager easier. I used to work in organizations where I had to put all my costs in a demand file in Excel, make my schedule in another tool or in Excel or in PowerPoint. And this tool, if you don't have to make good reports, you can also make a report based on your milestones. on this column, you can say, okay, what are my milestones? And if you don't have the time to make a milestone planning and show it to your management, you can say, just show me the milestones. Sorry, made a mistake. That's a no. I have to go here to the milestones and say, provide me all the milestones. Sorry. Then you can take your milestones and put it, for instance, on the PowerPoint presentation. Now I just don't understand why. Ah, yeah, I think I know why. When you make your tasks critical, it doesn't take them. Okay, that's better. So imagine you don't have the time to make a good report for the management. Then you can just make a filter here on the milestones and show it to your management, like when what is going to be delivered. Here on the bar style at the milestones, you can also put the name of the task. Then you can show when the analysis of features and so on is going to be finished. And also we can add here the percentage of completion. And they ask, for instance, feature one, what's the percentage of completion? Then you can say 12% is finished. Now, I hope that this presentation, which took a bit of a long time, people always say that I'm too detail oriented, and this is one of my strengths, but also sometimes my weakness. On a steerco, I give sometimes too much details, but this is actually a good presentation how you can make a project plan and you can highlight your schedule, your roadmap, your baseline, your slippage, the costs in euro or in another currency, and in man days, and also the percentage of completion, and also the durations, and in which sprints you can deliver what. I would like to thank you, everyone, for hearing this long presentation, and I hope it was useful for you. If you are interested to follow a training at my online, you can always message me on LinkedIn and we can arrange something. But know that Microsoft Projects is a good tool to manage your projects and establish a good governance. And the second objective is I myself don't believe that a project can be entirely done either in Agile or in Waterfall. In some cases, you need Agile, in some cases, you need Waterfall. And in any case, also in adaptive projects, in Agile projects, when you want to establish a roadmap, it's going to be predictive. So Agile is not 100% Agile, and Waterfall is also not 100% Waterfall. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Goodbye.